The kitchen clock read 11:47 p.m. when I heard Laurel's car pull into our driveway. I sat at the table nursing a lukewarm beer and pretending to read yesterday's newspaper for the third time. The front door opened with that familiar squeak I'd been meaning to fix for months, one of those husband tasks that never seemed urgent until moments like this. "Carter, you still up?" Her voice carried that forced cheerfulness she used when she was hiding something. After 12 years of marriage, I could read her tells like a poker player reads nervous ticks. "Just finishing up some paperwork," I called back, folding the newspaper. Through the kitchen doorway, I watched her kick off her heels, expensive ones I'd never seen before. Her hair looked freshly styled, not the disheveled mess you'd expect after showing houses to difficult clients until midnight. Laurel appeared in the doorway, smoothing down her black dress. "Sorry I'm so late." The Hendersons were impossible. Wanted to see every house in their price range twice. I nodded, taking another sip of beer. "The Hendersons, huh? Thought you said this morning it was the Kowalskis looking at properties tonight." She paused for just a fraction of a second, long enough for me to catch it. "Right. The Kowalskis. I'm exhausted, getting my clients mixed up." She laughed, but it sounded hollow. "The real estate market's been crazy lately." "I bet it has." I stood up, rinsing my bottle in the sink. "By the way, someone called the house phone around 9 looking for you. Said he was a client, but when I mentioned you were with the Kowalskis, he seemed confused." Laurel's reflection in the kitchen window went rigid. "Oh, probably just a mix-up with scheduling. You know how it is." She was already heading toward the stairs. "I'm beat. See you in the morning?" "Sweet dreams," I said to her retreating figure, but I didn't go to bed. Instead, I sat back down and opened my laptop. Laurel thought I was just a handyman, good with my hands, but not much going on upstairs. She'd made that clear enough over the years with her little comments about my simple job and blue-collar mentality. What she didn't know was that I'd been paying attention, real close attention. I pulled up the browser history on our shared computer. Laurel wasn't exactly tech-savvy, and she had no idea that deleting her search history didn't actually delete anything if you knew where to look. The past 3 months told an interesting story. Searches for divorce lawyers, asset protection, and how to prove a spouse was mentally unstable. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister Janet. "Don't forget about the Harvest Bash tomorrow. Laurel said you two would be there by noon. The Harvest Bash, our town's annual street festival where everyone gathered to drink beer, eat funnel cake, and catch up on gossip. Laurel loved it because it gave her a chance to network and show off. I used to enjoy it too, back when I thought my wife actually liked being seen with me." I closed the laptop and headed upstairs. Laurel was already in bed, turned away from my side. I could tell by her breathing that she wasn't asleep, just pretending to be. I lay there in the dark, listening to her fake sleep, and started planning. The next morning, Laurel was all smiles and energy, bustling around the kitchen in her festival outfit, a sundress that probably cost more than I made in a week. "I'm so excited for today," she chirped, pouring coffee into her travel mug. "Shelley said there's going to be a huge crowd." Perfect for networking. Shelley Morrison was Laurel's best friend and business partner at Morrison and Associates Real Estate. They'd known each other since high school and had that toxic kind of friendship where they bonded by tearing other people down. Shelley was divorced, bitter, and seemed to take pleasure in encouraging Laurel's worst impulses. "Speaking of Shelley," I said, buttering my toast, "didn't she introduce you to that house flipper guy? What's his name? Vince something?" Laurel's hand froze halfway to her coffee cup. "Vince Holbrook. He's a client. Why?" "Just curious. Seems like you've been working with him a lot lately." I kept my voice casual, but I was watching her face in my peripheral vision. "Must be buying a lot of properties." "He's very ambitious." She recovered quickly, but I caught the slight flush in her cheeks. "Anyway, we should get going soon. I promised Shelley we'd help her set up the real estate booth." An hour later, we were walking through downtown Millfield, past the vendor booths and carnival games. The smell of fried food and the sound of classic rock from the main stage filled the air. It should have been pleasant, a normal Saturday with my wife at a community event we'd attended together for years. But nothing felt normal anymore. Laurel spotted Shelley immediately and practically dragged me over to the Morrison and Associates booth. Shelley was there with Gina Martinez, a local social media influencer who documented every event in town for her Instagram followers. The three of them fell into their usual pattern of animated conversation and laughter. "Carter?" Shelley's voice was honey-sweet with an undertone of condescension. "How's the handyman business? Still crawling around in people's basements?" "Someone's got to do the dirty work," I replied with a smile. "Can't all be glamorous like selling houses." That's when Vince Holbrook appeared, walking up to our group like he belonged there. He was everything I wasn't: tall, broad-shouldered, with perfectly styled hair and clothes that screamed money. The kind of guy who'd been popular in high school and never got over it. "Ladies," he said with a grin that was probably supposed to be charming. His eyes lingered on Laurel a beat too long. "Beautiful day for a festival." "Vince!" Laurel's voice went up an octave. "I didn't know you were coming today." "Wouldn't miss it. Small-town events are great for meeting people." He finally acknowledged my existence with a nod. "You must be Carter. I've heard a lot about you." I shook his hand, noting his soft palms and expensive watch. "All good things, I hope." "Oh, absolutely." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Laurel tells me you're very handy around the house." The group laughed, and I felt something cold settle in my stomach. There was an inside joke here, and I was the punchline. "Actually," Laurel said, her voice taking on that performative quality she used when she had an audience, "living with Carter is like babysitting a grown man sometimes. I have to remind him to do everything, take out the trash, pay bills, basic adult responsibilities." More laughter. Shelley practically cackled. "Men never really grow up, do they?" "At least he's house-trained," Gina added, holding up her phone to record the conversation for her social media. Vince smirked. "Well, some of us are more self-sufficient than others." I stood there, smiling calmly, while my wife and her friends treated me like a pet they found amusing. The babysitting comment stung because it was so calculated, designed to make me look pathetic while making her look long-suffering and patient. "You're right, honey," I said, pulling out my phone. "I do need constant supervision." I opened my text messages and hit send on a message I'd typed earlier but hadn't sent. Then I slipped the phone back into my pocket. "Well, this has been fun, but I think I'll go grab a beer and let you ladies network." I kissed Laurel's cheek, noting how she stiffened slightly. "See you around, Vince." As I walked away, I could hear them launching into more stories about their useless husbands and boyfriends. But I wasn't listening anymore. I was thinking about the message I'd just sent and what would happen when Laurel checked her purse later. I found Mick Sullivan at the beer tent, already 3 drinks in despite it being barely past noon. Mick had been my best friend since elementary school, and he ran Sullivan's auto repair on the edge of town. He was also one of the few people who'd never treated me like I was stupid. "Carter." He raised his plastic cup. "How's married life treating you?" "About as well as you'd expect." I bought 2 beers and handed him one. "Need to ask you a favor, Mick." "Shoot." "You still got that police scanner app on your phone? The one that picks up cell phone signals?" Mick's expression grew serious. "Yeah, but Carter, I know what it is, and I know you used it to catch your ex-wife cheating 2 years ago." I took a long drink. "I need to borrow it." He studied my face for a long moment. "Jesus, Carter. You sure you want to go down this road?" "I'm already on it. Just need to know how far it goes." Mick nodded slowly and pulled out his phone. "All right, but whatever you find, you didn't get it from me." 20 minutes later, we were sitting in Mick's truck in the festival parking lot, listening to a very interesting conversation between my wife and Vince Holbrook. "Told you he's getting suspicious," Laurel's voice crackled through the phone speaker. So what? Guy's a moron. What's he going to do? Fix me to death? Vince's laughter made my jaw clench. This isn't funny, Vince. If he finds out about us, he won't. And even if he does, what's the worst that happens? You divorce him, take half his assets, and we move on with our lives. It's not that simple. I need more time to move things around financially. Make sure I get everything. How much more time? A few more weeks, maybe a month. I've been documenting his behavior, building a case that he's unstable. My lawyer thinks... The signal cut out. Mick and I sat in silence for a moment. Well, Mick said finally, that answers that question. I felt strangely calm. After months of suspicion and self-doubt, having confirmation was almost a relief. Can you get me copies of those recordings? Already done. He handed me a flash drive. What are you going to do? I'm going to give my wife exactly what she deserves. I pocketed the drive. But first, I need to go home and check something. The house was empty when I got home. Laurel had texted saying she was going to dinner with Shelley and Gina, probably to celebrate their successful humiliation of her husband at the festival. I didn't mind. It gave me time to work. Our house was a 1920s two-story with character, which was realtor speak for old and quirky. The basement was only half finished, with a crawl space that ran under the entire first floor. I'd been down there countless times fixing pipes, running electrical, and dealing with the usual maintenance issues that came with an old house. What Laurel didn't know was that the crawl space had excellent acoustics. Sound carried through the old heating vents like a telephone system. Over the past few months, I'd started hearing fragments of phone conversations from upstairs, enough to make me suspicious, but never enough to be certain. Tonight, I was going to make sure I heard everything. I grabbed my toolbox and headed downstairs. The crawlspace entrance was behind the water heater, barely big enough for a person to squeeze through. I'd lost 20 pounds over the past year. Stress will do that to you. So, I fit through easier than I used to. The space under the house was cramped and dusty, crisscrossed with pipes and electrical conduits. I made my way to the spot directly under the kitchen, where the old heating vent provided a clear audio connection to the room above. I'd already installed a small digital recorder there 2 weeks ago, hidden behind a bundle of cables. Tonight, I was upgrading the system. Working by flashlight, I installed 3 more recording devices at strategic points under the living room, Laurel's home office, and our bedroom. Each one was voice-activated and could record for up to 72 hours before the memory filled up. They were the kind of devices private investigators used, completely legal to install in your own home. By the time I finished, it was past midnight. I was dirty, exhausted, and my back ached from crawling around in tight spaces. But I felt more focused than I had in months. I was uploading the existing recordings to my laptop when I heard Laurel's car in the driveway. I quickly closed everything and pretended to be watching TV. "Hey," she said when she came in, not quite meeting my eyes. "How was your evening?" "Quiet. Watched some baseball." I muted the television. "How was dinner?" "Fine. Just girl talk, you know." She was fidgeting with her purse, and I noticed her phone wasn't in its usual spot in the side pocket. "Everything okay?" "You seem nervous." "I'm fine. Just tired." She headed for the stairs, then paused. "Carter, about today at the festival. I hope you didn't take the babysitting comment seriously. I was just joking around." "Of course. I know you were just having fun with your friends." She looked relieved. "Good. Well, good night." After she went upstairs, I opened my laptop again. The recordings from the past 2 weeks painted a clear picture of my marriage's slow-motion collapse. There were hours of phone calls with Vince, detailing their affair in explicit terms, conversations with Shelley about divorce strategy and asset protection, calls with a lawyer named Peterson about building a case for mental instability. But the most damaging recording was from 3 days ago, a conversation between Laurel and Vince about their long-term plans. Once I get rid of Carter, we can flip this house and use the money to start fresh somewhere else, Laurel's voice said through my laptop speakers. What about his business? Guy must have some money saved up. Not much. He's terrible with finances. But I've been moving money around, setting up accounts he doesn't know about. By the time the divorce is final, there won't be much left for him to claim. You're ruthless. I like that in a woman. I learned from the best. My mother always said, never let a man control your financial future. What if he fights it? He won't. Carter's too nice, too trusting. He'll probably just roll over and let me take whatever I want. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark living room, processing what I'd heard. My wife of 12 years was systematically destroying our marriage and planning to leave me with nothing. And she was doing it with a smug confidence that I'd be too weak or stupid to stop her. She was wrong about that. The next morning, I woke up early and drove to Peterson's law office before it opened. I sat in my truck across the street, sipping coffee and waiting. At 8:30 a.m., a silver BMW pulled into the parking lot. The driver was a thin man in his 50s with gray hair and an expensive suit. I followed him into the building. Mr. Peterson? I approached his receptionist. I'm Carter Pike. I believe my wife Laurel has been consulting with your firm. The receptionist looked uncomfortable. I'm sorry, but I can't discuss. It's fine, Margaret. Peterson had emerged from his office. Mr. Pike, what can I do for you? I'd like to retain your services. He raised an eyebrow. I'm afraid there might be a conflict of interest, given that your wife is planning to divorce me. Yes, I know. I pulled out a check I'd already written. But she hasn't actually filed yet, has she? And I'm willing to pay double your usual retainer. Peterson looked at the check, then at me. What exactly are you looking for, Mr. Pike? Protection. My wife is planning to claim I'm mentally unstable to get a better settlement. I have evidence that she's been having an affair and hiding assets. I want to make sure I'm protected when she makes her move. Evidence? I handed him a flash drive. Recordings of her admitting to the affair and discussing strategy with her lover. All recorded in my own home, completely legal. Peterson plugged the drive into his computer and listened to a few minutes of audio. His expression grew increasingly serious. Mr. Pike, these recordings, they're quite damaging to your wife's case. I know. The question is, what do we do with them? Well, we could certainly use them defensively if she files for divorce. But given the nature of what she's planning, he leaned back in his chair. Have you considered filing first? I smiled. Actually, I have a better idea. Over the next week, I let Laurel think she was winning. I played the part of the oblivious husband perfectly, asking innocent questions about her late nights, accepting her explanations without argument, even suggesting we plan a vacation together for the fall. Meanwhile, I was building my case. The new recording devices were working perfectly. I now had dozens of hours of conversations between Laurel and Vince, including detailed discussions of their intimate encounters and their plans for my future. More importantly, I had recordings of Laurel moving money out of our joint accounts and into accounts I wasn't supposed to know about. I also had Peterson working on protecting my assets. It turned out that Laurel's financial maneuvering was technically legal, but ethically questionable. More importantly, her conversations about it were evidence of deliberate deception in anticipation of divorce proceedings. But I wasn't ready to play that card yet. I had something else in mind first. On Thursday evening, Laurel announced she had to show houses late again. The Kowalskis want to see 3 more properties, and it's the only time they're available. No problem. I'll probably just grab a beer with Mick anyway. She kissed my cheek, a gesture that felt more like marking territory than affection. Don't wait up. 20 minutes after she left, I was in Mick's truck, following her silver Honda toward the other side of town. She didn't go to meet clients. Instead, she pulled into the parking lot of the Riverside Motel, a rundown place on the highway that rented rooms by the hour. Vince's red pickup was already there. Jesus, Carter, Mick muttered. This is really happening. Yeah, it is. I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures. But it's about to stop. I had Mick drop me off at the crawl space, the dive bar where I'd been meeting him for years. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and gossip spread faster than wildfire. Perfect for what I had planned. Old man Baines owned the place and had been serving drinks to the same crowd for 30 years. He knew every secret in town and wasn't shy about sharing them after a few beers. Carter. He waved me over to the bar. Haven't seen you in a while. How's Laurel? That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about. I ordered a beer and pulled out my phone. You know that house flipper, Vince Holbrook? Yeah. Comes in here sometimes, bragging about his conquests. Baines leaned closer. Why? I showed him one of the photos I'd taken at the motel. Turns out he's been conquering my wife. Baines whistled low. Shit, Carter. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be helpful. I finished my beer. Vince likes to brag, right? What's he been saying about me? You sure you want to know? I'm sure. Baines glanced around to make sure no one was listening. He's been calling you a pushover. Says Laurel complains about you all the time, that you're boring, bad in bed, no ambition. He thinks it's hilarious that he's screwing your wife right under your nose. I nodded calmly, but inside I was furious. It was one thing to have an affair. It was another to mock the betrayed spouse publicly. Here's what I need you to do, I said, pulling out a $20 bill. Next time Vince comes in here, I want you to ask him about his girlfriend. Laurel? No, his other girlfriend. The blonde one he's been seeing on the side. Baines looked confused. What blonde? I smiled. Trust me, there's a blonde. And when you ask him about her, make sure other people are listening. I left the bar and drove to Vince's current house-flipping project, a rundown Victorian on Elm Street. His truck wasn't there. He was still at the motel with my wife, but the house was unlocked. Contractors never worried about security in a small town. I let myself in and looked around. The place was a mess of construction debris and half-finished renovations. Vince was clearly in over his head. The electrical work was amateur, and the plumbing looked like it had been installed by someone who'd learned the trade from YouTube videos. I took photos of everything: the code violations, the unsafe wiring, the improper permits. Then I called my friend Danny at the building inspector's office and sent him the pictures. Jesus, Carter, this place is a disaster waiting to happen, Danny said when he called me back. I'll have to red tag it tomorrow. Thought you should know. Wouldn't want anyone getting hurt. By the time I got home, Laurel was already there, fresh from her client meeting. She was in an unusually good mood, humming while she got ready for bed. How did the showings go? I asked. Great. The Kowalskis are really interested in the ranch house on Maple Street. I think they'll make an offer tomorrow. I nodded, pretending to believe her. That's wonderful, honey. You're so good at your job. She smiled and kissed me goodnight. Thanks for being so understanding about all the late nights. I know it's hard on you. Not at all. I want you to be successful. As she headed upstairs, I activated the recording app on my phone. Within 10 minutes, I could hear her talking to Vince through the heating vent. He doesn't suspect anything, she was saying. I think we're in the clear. Good. Because I've got some bad news. The city inspector red-tagged the Elm Street house today. Says there are code violations. What? But you said you knew what you were doing with the renovations. I do know what I'm doing. This is just harassment. Probably some competitor trying to slow me down. This is going to cost us money, Vince. Us? It's my project. We're partners, remember? When Carter and I are divorced, I'm investing in your business. Right, of course. Don't worry, baby. I'll handle the inspector problem. I smiled in the dark. Phase 1 was complete. Now it was time for Phase 2. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to my sister Janet's house across town. Janet was 2 years younger than me, divorced, and worked as a paralegal at a law firm in the county seat. She was also fiercely protective of family and had never particularly liked Laurel. "I wondered when you'd figure it out," she said after I explained the situation. "I've been waiting for you to wake up for months." "You knew?" "I suspected. Laurel's been acting different at family gatherings, more confident, more dismissive of you, and she's been spending a lot of money on clothes and hair appointments for someone who's supposedly just showing houses." Janet poured coffee for both of us. "What do you need me to do?" "I need information on Vince Holbrook, financial records, business filings, anything public that might be useful." "I can do that. What else?" "I need you to casually mention to Mom that Laurel and I might be having some problems. Let the family gossip network do its thing." Janet grinned. "Mom will have it spread to every relative from here to Cleveland by Sunday." "But Carter, are you sure you want to go nuclear on this? Once you start down this path?" "I'm already on the path. Laurel put me here when she decided to cheat on me and steal my money." I finished my coffee. "I'm just choosing which direction to walk." That afternoon, I got a call from Peterson with interesting news. "I've been reviewing the financial documents you provided," he said. "Your wife has been very clever about moving assets, but she made one critical mistake." "What's that?" "She's been using joint account funds to pay for her affair, hotel rooms, dinners, gifts for Mr. Holbrook. Technically, that's dissipation of marital assets. In a divorce proceeding, she'd have to reimburse the marital estate for those expenses." "How much are we talking about?" "Based on what I can document?" "About $15,000 over the past 6 months." I whistled. "That's a lot of hotel rooms." "Indeed. But here's the more interesting part. She's also been paying for improvements to Mr. Holbrook's house flipping projects. That's a direct transfer of marital assets to her lover. Very illegal in divorce proceedings." "How illegal?" "The kind of illegal that could result in her owing you money instead of the other way around." Things were looking up. But I wasn't ready to file for divorce yet. I wanted Laurel and Vince to understand exactly what they'd lost before I took it away from them. That evening, I put the next phase of my plan into action. Laurel was at her weekly book club, which I now knew was actually a strategy session with Shelley and Gina about managing their respective romantic dramas. While she was gone, I drove to the Riverside Motel and had a conversation with the desk clerk. "You've got a regular customer," I said, showing him Vince's photo. "Red pickup, comes here with different women." The clerk, a kid barely out of high school, looked nervous. "I can't really talk about customers, man." I slid a $50 bill across the counter. "I'm not a cop. I'm a private investigator working a cheating spouse case. I just need to know his pattern." The kid pocketed the money. "He's here 2-3 times a week, usually the same blonde woman, but sometimes others." "Others?" "Yeah, there's a brunette he brings sometimes. Older woman, real estate agent, I think. And there was a redhead last week." Bingo. Vince wasn't just cheating on me with my wife. He was cheating on my wife with other women. This was getting better by the minute. "The blonde, you know her name?" "Crystal something. She works at the hair salon on Main Street." I thanked the kid and drove to Crystal's hair design. It was closed for the evening, but I could see lights on in the back. I knocked on the rear door. A woman in her 30s answered. Bottle blonde, attractive in a hard-edged way. "We're closed. I'm not here for a haircut. I'm here about Vince Holbrook." Her expression immediately became guarded. "What about him?" "I'm Carter Pike. Vince has been having an affair with my wife." Crystal's eyes widened. "Your wife?" "But he told me—" She stopped herself. "He told you what?" She looked around nervously, then stepped outside and closed the door behind her. "He told me he was single. We've been dating for 3 months. I hate to break it to you, but Vince has been telling a lot of women he's single. My wife thinks she's his only girlfriend." Crystal's face flushed with anger. "That lying son of a—" I knew something was off when he could only see me certain nights. "I'm planning to expose him publicly. Are you interested in helping?" She smiled grimly. What did you have in mind? By the time I got home, Laurel was back from book club, already in bed. I could hear her talking quietly on her phone, probably to Vince, planning their next rendezvous. I lay in bed next to my cheating wife and listened to her make plans to betray me, and I smiled. Because tomorrow, Vince Holbrook was going to learn that some husbands don't just roll over and play dead. And Laurel was going to learn that underestimating people is a dangerous game. Saturday morning arrived with unseasonably warm weather and clear skies. Laurel was excited because she had an open house scheduled for one of her prime listings, a colonial on the good side of town that she'd been trying to sell for months. This could be a big commission, she said over coffee, checking her makeup in her phone camera. I'm hoping for multiple offers. That's great, honey. You deserve success. She smiled at me with what might have been genuine affection if I didn't know better. You're so supportive, Carter. I'm lucky to have you. The irony was thick enough to cut with a knife. After she left, I called Mick. You ready for today? Ready as I'll ever be. You sure about this plan? Absolutely. Meet me at Sullivan's in an hour. Mick's auto shop was perfect for what I had in mind. Isolated enough for privacy, but visible from the main road. I'd asked him to invite a few of our mutual friends to hang out, work on their cars, and drink beer. Nothing unusual for a Saturday afternoon. What would be unusual was Vince Holbrook showing up. I'd sent him a text that morning from a burner phone, claiming to be a potential investor interested in his house-flipping business. The message suggested meeting at Sullivan's Auto to discuss a possible partnership worth $50,000. Vince's greed would bring him right to me. While I waited, I called Crystal. You still want to help me teach Vince a lesson? Hell yes. What do you need? Show up at Sullivan's Auto Repair on Industrial Road in about an hour. Bring some friends if you want. There's going to be a show. At 2 p.m., Vince's red pickup pulled into the shop parking lot. He got out looking confused, clearly not expecting to find a bunch of guys working on cars and drinking beer. Excuse me, he called out. I'm looking for someone about an investment opportunity. I stepped out from behind Mick's tow truck. That would be me. Vince's face went from confusion to recognition to wariness in about 3 seconds. Carter? What the hell is this? This is a conversation that's long overdue. I walked closer, and I was pleased to see him take a step back. See, Vince, I know about you and my wife. The guys at the shop had stopped what they were doing and were watching with interest. Mick was recording everything on his phone. I don't know what you're talking about, Vince said, but his voice lacked conviction. Sure you do. The Riverside Motel, Tuesday and Thursday nights, sometimes Saturdays when she tells me she's working. I pulled out my phone and showed him one of the photos. You remember this, right? Vince looked at the image of him and Laurel entering the motel room, and his face went pale. Look, Carter, it's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You've been screwing my wife and bragging about it all over town. I was close enough now that he had to look up at me. Despite his size advantage, Vince was backing away. But here's the thing, Vince. You're not the only one who's been getting screwed. That's when Crystal arrived, right on schedule. She parked her car and walked over with 2 of her friends from the salon. Hey, baby, she called out to Vince with fake enthusiasm. Surprise! Vince's head snapped around, and his face went completely white. Crystal? What are you doing here? I came to see my boyfriend. You know, the single guy I've been dating for 3 months? She looked at me with mock confusion. Oh, wait. That's right. You're not single, are you? The guys from the shop were laughing now. Vince looked like he wanted to disappear. This is insane, he stammered. Crystal, I can explain. Explain what? That you lied to me? That you've been cheating on your married girlfriend with me, or cheating on me with your married girlfriend? Crystal's voice was getting louder. Or maybe you want to explain why you told me you were a successful businessman when you're actually broke and getting your projects shut down by the city. That last part was news to me, but I filed it away for later use. You're all crazy, Vince said. looking around desperately. I don't have to listen to this. He started toward his truck, but I stepped into his path. Actually, you do. Because we're not done talking. I held up my phone again. See, I've got hours of recordings of you and Laurel planning to screw me over in the divorce, talking about how stupid I am, how easy it'll be to take everything I've worked for. That's illegal. You can't record people without their consent. Actually, I can. In my own house, with my own equipment. Completely legal. I smiled. Want to hear your greatest hits? There's the one where you call me a pathetic loser. The one where you and Laurel laugh about how gullible I am. Oh, and my personal favorite. The one where you two plan to use my money to start your new life together. Vince lunged at me, but I was ready for it. I sidestepped and let his momentum carry him past me. He stumbled and fell face first into the gravel parking lot. The crowd erupted in laughter and applause. Stay down, Vince, I said calmly. You're embarrassing yourself. He got to his feet, his face bloody from the gravel, and pointed a shaking finger at me. You think you're so smart? Your wife hates you. She's been planning to leave you for months. I know. I've been listening to her plan it. I pulled out a small digital recorder and hit play. Laurel's voice filled the parking lot. Carter's so pathetic. He has no idea what's coming. By the time I'm done with him, he'll be lucky to keep his tools and his truck. Then Vince's voice. Guy's a total loser. I almost feel sorry for him. The crowd had gone quiet, listening to the recording with fascination. Turn it off, Vince said desperately. Why? This is the good part. I let it play a little longer, until Laurel's voice described in explicit detail what she and Vince had done in our bedroom while I was at work. Enough, Vince shouted. I get it. You win. Just stop. I turned off the recorder. I win? Vince, I haven't even started winning yet. That's when my phone rang. It was Laurel. Hey, honey, I answered, putting it on speaker. How's the open house going? Carter, something terrible has happened. Her voice was panicked. Someone sabotaged my open house. There were protesters outside with signs saying I'm a cheater and a liar. And someone called all my potential buyers and told them not to come. I looked at Crystal, who gave me a thumbs up. She'd been busy while I was dealing with Vince. That's awful, sweetheart. Who would do such a thing? I don't know, but I think it might be connected to that investor who contacted Vince. He never showed up for their meeting, and now this happens? It's too much of a coincidence. You're probably right. Where are you now? I'm at the office with Shelley, trying to figure out what to do. This could ruin my reputation. I'm sure it'll blow over. I'll be home in a little while and we can talk about it. I hung up and looked at Vince, who was standing there with blood on his face and gravel in his hair. Looks like you're having a bad day too, buddy. But don't worry, it's about to get worse. By the time I got home, Laurel was in full crisis mode. She was pacing around the living room, her phone pressed to her ear, trying to do damage control with her clients and colleagues. I don't care what the signs said, she was saying. It's all lies, just someone trying to sabotage my business. She hung up and turned to me with tears in her eyes. Carter, this is a disaster. Someone is trying to destroy my career. I sat down on the couch and patted the cushion next to me. Come here. Tell me what happened. She sat down and leaned against me, and for a moment it felt like the old days when we actually supported each other. Someone organized a protest at my open house. They had signs calling me an adulteress and a liar. And they somehow got the contact information for everyone who was supposed to come look at the house and called them all with stories about me being unethical. That's terrible. Do you have any idea who might want to hurt you like this? Laurel was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was small. Carter, I need to tell you something. Here it comes, I thought. The confession. The crocodile tears. The plea for forgiveness. I've been having an affair. I did my best to look shocked. What? With Vince Holbrook, the house flipper. It's been going on for 6 months. She was crying now, but I noticed she was watching my reaction carefully. I'm so sorry, Carter. I never meant for it to happen. 6 months? I stood up, pacing away from her. Jesus, Laurel, 6 months? I know how it sounds, but it just happened. We were working together, and he was so charming, and things between us have been difficult lately. So this is my fault? No! That's not what I meant. She wiped her eyes. I got caught up in something that felt exciting and new, but it's over now. I ended it with Vince this afternoon. That was interesting. I wondered if she'd ended it before or after learning about Crystal. Why are you telling me this now? Because I think Vince might be behind what happened today. When I told him I wanted to end things, he got angry. He said he could ruin my reputation if I tried to leave him. I almost laughed. Laurel was trying to play the victim, casting Vince as the villain who seduced and then threatened her. It was a good story, except I had recordings that proved she'd been the driving force behind most of their scheming. So, what do you want to do? I asked. I want to save our marriage. I want to make this right. She stood up and came to me, taking my hands. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I love you, Carter. I made a terrible mistake, but it's over now. I looked into her eyes and saw calculation behind the tears. She was scared, not of losing me, but of losing her financial security. The protest at her open house had shown her how quickly her reputation could be destroyed, and she was trying to get back to safe ground. I need time to think about this, I said finally. Of course. Take all the time you need. She squeezed my hands. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. That night, after Laurel went to bed, I sat in the kitchen and listened to the latest recordings from upstairs. She was on the phone with Shelley, and their conversation was very different from the scene she'd played for me. I had to tell him about the affair, Laurel was saying. After what happened today, he was going to find out anyway. But you made it sound like it was all Vince's idea, right? Shelley's voice was tinny through the phone speaker. Of course. I painted myself as the victim of his manipulation. Carter's so naive, he'll probably believe it. What about the divorce plans? On hold for now. I need to let things calm down and rebuild my reputation. Then I can go back to the original plan. And Vince? Vince is a liability now. I'm cutting him loose completely. I smiled grimly. Even when she was confessing to adultery, Laurel was scheming. She thought she could manipulate me into taking her back, then resume her plans to divorce me once the heat died down. She was wrong. The next morning, I called Peterson. It's time to file. Are you sure? Your wife's confession could actually work in your favor. If she thinks you're reconciling, she's not reconciling. She's regrouping. I want to file for divorce today, and I want to freeze all our joint assets. That's aggressive. It'll tip her off that you know more than you've let on. Good. I want her to know exactly what she's lost. 2 hours later, a process server arrived at Laurel's office with divorce papers. According to Shelley, who called me in a panic, Laurel screamed loud enough to be heard through the entire building. My phone rang 5 minutes later. Carter, what the hell is this? Laurel's voice was shaking with rage. It's a divorce petition. I thought the legal terminology was pretty clear. But I told you I wanted to save our marriage. And I told you I needed time to think. I thought about it, and I realized I don't want to be married to a cheating liar who's been planning to screw me over for months. There was silence on the other end of the line. I don't know what you think you know. I know everything, Laurel. The affair, the financial planning, the asset hiding, all of it. I've been recording your conversations for weeks. That's illegal. No, it's not. And even if it were, the recordings aren't the only evidence I have. Bank records, hotel receipts, witness statements. I've got enough to bury you in court. You've been planning this, just like you were planning to destroy me. The difference is I'm better at it than you are. She hung up on me, but my phone rang again almost immediately. This time, it was Vince. Carter, we need to talk. No, we really don't. Listen to me. Laurel is crazy, okay? She's been stalking me, threatening to ruin my business if I don't leave my girlfriend. I never wanted any of this. I laughed. Your girlfriend? You mean Crystal? Yeah, I met her yesterday. Nice woman. She had some interesting stories about your relationship. Look, I'll testify for you in the divorce. I'll tell the court that Laurel seduced me, that she was the one planning everything. Just don't destroy my business. Your business was already destroyed, Vince. The city shut down your projects, remember? Something about code violations and improper permits. That was you. That was you doing shoddy work and getting caught. I just made sure the right people noticed. You're insane. No, I'm thorough. There's a difference. I hung up on him too. Over the next few days, Laurel tried every manipulation tactic in her arsenal. She showed up at my worksite crying, begging me to reconsider. She had Shelley call me with stories about how devastated Laurel was. She even got her mother to call and lecture me about forgiveness and the sanctity of marriage. None of it worked. Peterson was handling the divorce proceedings with ruthless efficiency. The recordings I'd made were devastating evidence of Laurel's adultery and financial misconduct. The money she'd moved to hidden accounts would have to be returned to the marital estate. The funds she'd spent on her affair and on Vince's business ventures would be deducted from her settlement. When the numbers were tallied, Laurel would be lucky to walk away with 20% of our joint assets. But I wasn't done yet. 3 weeks after I filed for divorce, Laurel made one last desperate play. She showed up at my sister Janet's house while I was there for Sunday dinner, demanding to speak with me privately. "This is harassment, Laurel," Janet said, blocking the doorway. "Carter doesn't want to see you." "Please," Laurel said, and for the first time since this whole thing started, she looked genuinely broken. "I just need 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I agreed to talk to her on Janet's front porch. "I know you hate me," she began, "but we were married for 12 years. That has to count for something." It did count for something. That's why this hurts so much. I made a mistake, Carter. A terrible, stupid mistake. But I'm willing to give you everything in the divorce if you'll just agree to keep the recordings private. I studied her face. Everything? The house, the savings, my retirement account? All of it. I just don't want those recordings made public. Why? Worried about your reputation? I'm worried about my career. If those recordings get out, I'll never work in real estate again. I'll have nothing. You should have thought of that before you decided to cheat on me and steal my money. I wasn't stealing. I was just protecting myself. By hiding assets and planning to claim I was mentally unstable? She flinched. You weren't supposed to know about that. There's a lot of things I wasn't supposed to know about. But I did know, Laurel. I knew for months, and I let you keep digging your own grave. So what do you want? Revenge? You've got it. I'm losing everything. My marriage, my career, my reputation. Isn't that enough? I looked at this woman I'd been married to for over a decade, and I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no satisfaction, just emptiness. It's not about revenge, I said finally. It's about consequences. You made choices, and now you get to live with them. And the recordings? Will remain private as long as you don't contest the divorce settlement and you stay away from me. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Thank you. Don't thank me, Laurel. I'm not doing this for you. 2 months later, our divorce was finalized. Laurel got nothing. She'd signed away her rights to everything in exchange for my promise to keep the recordings private. She moved back in with her parents and took a job as a secretary at a law firm in the next county. Vince Holbrook's house-flipping business collapsed completely. Between the city violations, the bad publicity, and the loss of Laurel's financial support, he was bankrupt within 6 months. Last I heard, he was working construction for someone else and living in a studio apartment. Crystal opened her own salon and was doing well. We occasionally ran into each other around town and would nod politely, two people who'd helped each other through a difficult time. I kept the house and started my own contracting business. Without Laurel's expensive tastes and social climbing, I found I had more money than I knew what to do with. I hired 2 employees and started taking on bigger projects. 6 months after the divorce was final, I was working late in my home office when I heard a familiar sound, footsteps in the crawl space under the house. For a moment, I thought someone had broken in. Then I realized what I was hearing. It was just the house settling, the old wood and pipes adjusting to temperature changes. The same sounds I'd been hearing for years, but had never really noticed until I started spending so much time listening through the heating vents. I went downstairs and looked at the entrance to the crawl space. I'd sealed it up after the divorce was final, no longer needing access to my surveillance equipment. The recording devices were still there, silent now, gathering dust along with the ghosts of my failed marriage. I thought about Laurel sometimes, wondered if she ever regretted her choices or if she just regretted getting caught. I thought about the 12 years we'd spent together, the good times before everything went wrong, the gradual erosion of trust and respect that had led us to that final confrontation. But mostly, I didn't think about her at all. I'd learned something important during those months of planning and surveillance. The best revenge isn't hurting someone else. It's building a life so good that their absence improves it. I was sitting on my front porch one evening, drinking a beer and watching the sunset, when Mick pulled into my driveway. "How's the bachelor life treating you?" he asked, grabbing a beer from the cooler I kept on the porch. "Can't complain. House is quiet, bills are paid, and nobody's planning to screw me over. You ever think about dating again?" "Maybe someday. Right now, I'm enjoying the peace and quiet." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, 2 old friends watching the world go by. "You know," Mick said eventually, "I always thought Laurel was wrong about you." "How so?" "She thought you were simple. Thought you were just a dumb handyman who didn't pay attention to anything important." He took a swig of beer. "But you're probably the smartest guy I know. You just don't feel the need to prove it to everyone. Smart enough to know when someone's trying to destroy my life. Smart enough to stop them." He raised his bottle. "Here's to knowing when to fight back." I clinked my bottle against his. "And knowing how to win." As the sun set behind the trees, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Contentment. My marriage was over, my wife was gone, and my life was finally my own again. The ghosts in the crawl space had been laid to rest.